Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 19 on Weimar Germany and the rise of the Nazi Party. And this video, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about Nazi control of two things. One, the law or the legal system, and the second, churches and religion. So this video will be divided into two sections. Now let's have a look at the law, the legal system first. It's another form of police state control. Remember a previous video I said how the Nazis introduced the police state, the SS, the Gestapo, etc. Here, Hitler and the Nazis are actually trying to control the legal process, control the law. And they did it by introducing three measures. Now, the first measure, the judges. They had to become members of the National Socialist League for the Maintenance of the Law. In other words, they had to promise to become Nazi judges. If they refused, they were sacked. From 1936, all judges wore the swastika in court, and the Nazi eagle was on all the robes in court. Well, imagine walking in as the accused, as the defendant. What chance would you have of a fair trial if the judge is wearing a swastika? What do you think? So that's the first measure. Hitler is getting the judges on his side. The second measure, October 1933, it's to do with the lawyers. All lawyers had to swear an oath. And here's the oath. Have a listen. To follow our Führer to the end of our days. They had to promise total loyalty to Hitler. Not to the law, not to fairness, but to Hitler. So he's controlling the judges, and then he's controlling the lawyers. And they had to, the German lawyers had to join the German Lawyers' Front. And by December 1933, there were 10,000 members in this Nazi society of lawyers, if you like. The third and final measure to do with the legal system, 1934. The People's Court was set up to try cases of treason. Treason, crimes against the state, crimes against Germany, crimes against the Nazis. So a People's Court was set up. The judges, of course, they are loyal Nazis. The trials were held in secret. There was no right to appeal the sentence or the judgment. And sometimes, if the judge gave the sentence and Hitler did not like it, Hitler would impose a more severe sentence. He would increase the penalty. Now, often these sentences were very, very severe. To give you an example of that, between 1930 and 1932, in other words, before Hitler took power, there were 8 death sentences passed for political offences. 8. That's 4 a year. 1934 to 1939, with Hitler in charge, that rose to 534. In other words, more than 100 a year, more than 2 a week. Used to be 4 a year, and now it's 2 a week. So we see that the sentences for political offences, crimes against Hitler and the Nazis, were very, very severe. There was one very famous German judge, a man called Roland Freisler. Great name, sadly not a great judge. Roland Freisler. And in the cases that he was judge and trying, 90% ended in the death penalty. That shows the severity. That shows just how much Hitler and the Nazis are controlling the legal system. Now, one final example about that. There was one German man appeared before the People's Court. His crime? Hoarding eggs. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, eggs, just normal eggs. He'd been hoarding them, he'd been hiding them. Maybe he'd put them in a shelter. It could have been an egg shelter. Egg shelter. Sorry, I apologise. Now, okay, it's not a particularly serious crime. He'd been hiding and hoarding and keeping eggs. His sentence? 2.5 years in prison. Wow, that's beginning to show you how severe some of the sentences actually were. I suppose you could say that sentence really, it was a bit extreme. Extreme. Sorry, that's a terrible joke. That's enough. No more now in this video. That is it. I apologise totally. But the point is a serious one, despite all my rubbish jokes. The crimes were not that severe, but yet the penalties were. Hitler has gained control of the legal system, and he's using fear to control the people. So that's the first half of the video. Now let's turn to religion. Now, it was a tricky one for Hitler, the whole concept of religion. You've got to remember, Germany was a Christian country. So many German people went to church every Sunday. They followed the Christian message. Well, what is the Christian message? Well, surely, even today, the Christian message is words like, let's have a think, love, forgiveness, tolerance, respect, helping others, helping the weak. But ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the Nazi message. So there is a conflict here. Hitler was aware that many Germans had these ideas and beliefs in their life and would go to church. But at the same time, he didn't necessarily share those beliefs. So what can he do? Well, let's have a look at the two main churches, the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. We'll start with the Catholic Church. About 1/3 of the German population were Catholics, mainly in the south of Germany. That's where they were the strongest. Now, Hitler's unhappy with the Catholics for a couple of reasons. Number one, in the Catholic religion, the Catholics believe that the Pope is the supreme authority, and Catholics were showing allegiance to the Pope. Well, Hitler won't want that, because he wanted everyone to swear loyalty and allegiance and obedience to him. So first of all, straight away, Hitler will have a few problems with that. Secondly, the Catholics had their own schools, their own youth organisations. Well, Hitler won't want that either. Why not? That's right, because he will see that as a challenge to his power, his authority. He wanted the Catholic youth to join his youth organisations, particularly the Hitler Youth. So there's a couple of reasons there why Hitler wasn't particularly happy with the Catholic Church. Now, at first, he tried to solve the problem through negotiation, through persuasion. And in 1933, just after he became the leader in that first year, Hitler signed something called the Concordat. Now, that's a posh word for agreement. Hitler signed an agreement with the Pope in Rome, Pope Pius XI. So the Nazis and the Catholic Church are signing almost like a treaty, an agreement. And it basically said this: look, let's agree to treat each other and not interfere with each other. So Hitler's saying, I won't interfere in the Catholic Church matters, and in return, you will not interfere in anything to do with German politics. That was the Concordat. That was the agreement. But that wasn't good enough for Hitler. And a few months later, Hitler broke the agreement. First thing he did, remember that Catholic schools, those Catholic schools I was talking about? They were almost independent of the German state. Well, Hitler's not happy. He wants to control the education of the German youth. He doesn't want the Catholics to have the freedom to do that. So he starts to attack the Catholic schools. First of all, he removes the cross or the crucifix, which was the Christian symbol. So he starts small, but it then increases and increases, and in the end the Catholic schools were closed. Hitler is breaking his own Concordat. Now, some Catholic priests obviously opposed this, they criticised it, they spoke out against it, and they were picked on, they were harassed, and in some cases they were arrested and sent to the concentration camps. In Dachau, remember the first concentration camp? There was a block in which it was all priests, all Catholic priests, 400 Catholic priests in one block in Dachau concentration camp. Hitler is beginning to clamp down on the Catholic Church. The third thing he does, remember, remove the crucifix and shut the schools. Send the priests to the concentration camps. The third thing he does is he begins to shut down the Catholic youth groups because he wants them all to attend his Hitler Youth. Now, Pope Pius XI, what was he going to do? Well, there wasn't really a great deal that he could do. For a start off, he's over in Rome. Secondly, he's got no army, he's got no power. All he could do was criticise. And he did. In 1937, he wrote a papal letter which was read out in all of the churches. And he criticised a very stinging criticism of the Nazi regime. And the letter was called With Burning Anxiety. In other words, I am very worried by what is happening to the Catholics in Germany. And as we'll see in a later video, the churches were involved in opposition and going against Hitler. I'll do more on that in a later video. So that's the story with Hitler and the Catholic Church. Finally in the video, Hitler and the Protestant Church. Now, about 2/3 of the German people were Protestants, mainly in the centre of Germany and the north. Now, in the Protestant Church, reaction to Hitler was divided. Some Protestants actually admired Hitler, and they formed what was called the Reich Church. 1933, led by a man called Ludwig Müller, and they had the swastika in their church buildings. And they're basically calling themselves German Christians. And they had a motto, their famous phrase was this: with the swastika on our chests and the cross in our hearts. In other words, they were claiming it was possible to be Nazi and Christian. So Hitler's got no problem with that part of the Protestant Church because they are accepting his message. But there were some Protestants who rejected this. They opposed this new Reich Church. They said, no, I don't think you can be Nazi and Christian. And in 1933, just after Hitler took power, they set up the Pastors' Emergency League. And 6,000 pastors, or Protestant vicars or priests, led by a man called Martin Niemöller, they set up a church which is basically opposing Hitler. What would Hitler do about those people, do you think? Yes, Martin Niemöller and others ended up in the concentration camps. But again, that part of the Protestant Church was showing opposition to Hitler. And again, I will go into that in more detail in a later video on opposition. So we've seen in this video, Hitler controls the legal system and he's trying to get control of the churches. It was a bit trickier trying to get control of the churches, but he's either winning them over, the Reich Church, Protestants, or he's putting them in concentration camps, the Catholic priests and the Protestant pastors from the Emergency League, the confessional church sometimes as it was known. So just to finish, remembering what we've done in the previous videos about control. Hitler now controlled the Reichstag through the Enabling Act, the Nazi Party through the Night of the Long Knives, he controlled the police, he controlled the legal system, he controlled the churches to some degree. How's he done it? He's used fear, he's used force, but he's also used persuasion and propaganda. But I haven't really explained yet how those two parts were used. So that will be the next video, ladies and gentlemen. The Nazi Party using persuasion and propaganda to get control of German society. So that's coming next. As ever, I hope it's been useful. I apologise for my terrible jokes earlier in the video, but I can't promise that there won't be some more in videos to come. All the best now. Hope it's been useful. Speak to you soon.